Company Intelligence Report 2016/102. Russia-US presidential election reaction in Trump camp to recent negative publicity about Russian interference and likely resulting tactics going forward. Summary. Trump campaign insider reports recent DNC email leaks were aimed at switching Sanders protest voters away from Clinton and over to Trump. Admits Republican campaign underestimated resulting negative reaction from U.S. liberals, elite, and media and forced to change course as a result. Need now to turn tables on Clinton's use of Putin as boogeyman in election, although some resentment at Russian president's perceived attempt to undermine U.S. government and system over and above swinging presidential election. Detail. Speaking in confidence on 9 August 2016, an ethnic Russian associate of Republican U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump discussed the reaction inside his camp and revised tactics therein resulting from recent negative publicity concerning Moscow's clandestine involvement in the campaign. Trump's associate reported that the aim of leaking the DNC emails to WikiLeaks during the Democratic Convention had been to swing supporters of Bernie Sanders away from Hillary Clinton and across to Trump. These voters were perceived as activists and anti-status quo and anti-establishment, and in that regard sharing many features with the Trump campaign, including a visceral dislike of Hillary Clinton. This objective had been conceived and promoted inter alia by Trump's foreign policy advisor Carter Page, a person so stupid that he can only be a conduit of the KGB, who had discussed it directly with the ethnic Russian associate. Continuing on this theme, the ethnic Russian associate of Trump assessed that the problem was that the Trump campaign had underestimated the strength of the negative reaction from liberals and especially the conservative elite to Russian interference. This was forcing a rethink and a likely change of tactics. The main objective in the short term was to check Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton's successful exploitation of Putin as boogeyman, Russian interference story to tarnish Trump and bolster his own patriotic credentials. Her own patriotic credentials. The Trump campaign was focusing on tapping into support in the American television media to achieve this, as they reckoned this resource has been underused by them to date. However, Trump's associate also admitted that there was a fair amount of anger and resentment within the Republican candidate's team at what was perceived by Putin as going beyond the objective of weakening Clinton and bolstering Trump by attempting to exploit the situation to undermine the U.S. government and democratic system more generally. It was unclear at present how this aspect of the situation would play out in the weeks to come. 10 August 2016. Company Intelligence Report 2016/136. Russia-US presidential election. Further details of Trump lawyer Cohen's secret liaison with the Kremlin. Summary. Kremlin insider reports Trump lawyer Cohen's secret meeting with Kremlin officials in August 2016 were held in Prague. Russian parastatal organization Rosotrudnichestvo used as cover for this liaison, and premises in Czech capital may have been used for the meetings. Pro-Putin leading Duma figure Kosachev reportedly involved as plausibly deniable facilitator and may have participated in the August meetings with Cohen. Detail. Speaking to a compatriot and friend on 19 October 2016, a Kremlin insider provided further details of reported clandestine meetings between Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump's lawyer Mark Cohen and Kremlin representatives in August 2016. Although the communication between them had to be cryptic for security reasons, the Kremlin insider clearly indicated to his friend that the reported contacts took place in Prague, Czech Republic. 2. Continuing on this theme, the Kremlin insider highlighted the importance of the Russian parastatal organization Rosotrudnichestvo in this contact between Trump campaign representative and Kremlin officials. Rosotrudnichestvo was being used as cover for this relationship, and its office in Prague may well have been used to host the Cohen Russian presidential administration meeting. It was considered a plausibly deniable vehicle for this, whilst remaining entirely under Kremlin control. 3. The Kremlin insider went on to identify leading pro-Putin Duma figure Konstantin Kosachev, head of the Foreign Relations Committee, as an important figure in the Trump campaign Kremlin liaison operation. Kosachev also, quote, plausibly deniable, end quote, being part of the Russian legislature rather than executive, had facilitated the contact in Prague and by implication may have attended the meetings with Cohen there in August. Company comment: We reported previously in our Company Intelligence Report 2016/135 of 19 October 2016 from the same source that Cohen met officials from the Presidential Administration Legal Department clandestinely in an EU country in August 2016. This one was in order to clean up the mess left behind by Western media revelations of Trump ex-campaign manager Manafort's corrupt relationship with the former pro-Russian Yanukovych regime in Ukraine, and Trump foreign policy advisor Carter Page's secret meetings in Moscow with senior regime figures in July 2016. According to the Kremlin advisor, these meetings were originally scheduled for Cohen in Moscow, but shifted to what was considered an operationally soft EU country when it was judged too compromising for him to travel to the Russian capital 20 October 2016. Company Intelligence Report 2016/105. Russia-Ukraine, the demise of Trump's campaign manager Paul Manafort. Summary: Ex-Ukrainian President Yanukovych confides directly to Putin that he authorized kickback payments to Manafort, as alleged in Western media. Assures Russian President, however, there is no documentary evidence or trail. Putin and Russian leadership remain worried, however, and skeptical that Yanukovych has fully covered these traces of these payments to Trump's former campaign manager. Close associate of Trump explains reasons behind Manafort's recent resignation. Ukraine revelations played part, but others wanted Manafort out for various reasons, especially Lewandowski, who remains influential. Detail. 1. Speaking in late August 2016, in the immediate aftermath of Paul Manafort's resignation as campaign manager for U.S. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump, a well-placed Russian figure reported on a recent meeting between President Putin and ex-President Yanukovych of Ukraine. This had been held in secret on 15 August near Volgograd, Russia, and the Western media revelations about Manafort and Ukraine had featured prominently on the agenda. Yanukovych had confided in Putin that he did authorize and order substantial kickback payments to Manafort as alleged but sought to reassure him that there was no documentary trail left behind which could provide clear evidence of this. 2. Given Yanukovych's unimpressive record in covering up his own corrupt tracks in the past, Putin and others in the Russian leadership were skeptical about the ex-Ukrainian president's reassurances on this as relating to Manafort. They therefore still feared the scandal had legs, especially as Manafort had been commercially active in Ukraine right up to the time in March 2016 when he joined Trump's campaign team. For them it therefore remained a point of potential political vulnerability and embarrassment. 3. Speaking separately, also in late August 2016, an American political figure associated with Donald Trump and his campaign outlined the reasons behind Manafort's recent demise. He said it was true that the Ukraine corruption revelations had played a part in this, but also several senior players close to Trump had wanted Manafort out, primarily to loosen his control on strategy and policy formulation. Of particular importance in this regard was Manafort's predecessor as campaign manager Corey Lewandowski, who hated Manafort personally and remained close to Trump, with whom he discussed the presidential campaign on a regular basis. 22 August 2016. Company Intelligence Report 2016/111 Russia-US Kremlin fallout from media exposure of Moscow's interference in the US presidential campaign. Summary: Kremlin orders senior staff to remain silent in media and private on allegations of Russian interference in US presidential campaign. Senior figure, however, confirms gist of allegations and reports Ivanov sacked as head of administration on account of giving Putin poor advice on issue. Weiner selected as his replacement partly because he was not involved in pro-Trump, anti-Clinton operations. Russians do have further compromise on Clinton, emails, and considering disseminating it after Duma legislative elections in late September. Presidential spokesman Peskov continues to lead on this. However, equally important is Kremlin's objective to shift policy consensus favorably to Russia in US post-Obama whoever wins. Both presidential candidates' opposition to TPP and TTIP viewed as a result in this respect. Senior Russian diplomat withdrawn from Washington embassy on account of potential exposure in US presidential election operations. Detail. Speaking in confidence to a trusted compatriot in mid-September 2016, a senior member of the Russian presidential administration (PA) commented on the political fallout from recent Western media revelations about Moscow's intervention in favor of Donald Trump and against Hillary Clinton in the US presidential election. The PA official reported that the issue had become incredibly sensitive and that President Putin had issued direct orders that Kremlin and government insiders should not discuss it in public or even in private. Despite this, the PA official confirmed from direct knowledge that the gist of the allegations was true. Putin had been receiving conflicting advice on interfering from 3 separate and expert groups. On one side had been the Russian ambassador to the US Sergei Kislyak and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, together with an independent and informal network run by presidential foreign policy advisor Yuri Ushakov. Kislyak's predecessor in Washington, who had urged caution and the potential negative impact on Russia from the operations. On the other side was former PA head Sergei Ivanov, backed by Russian foreign intelligence SVR, who had advised Putin that the pro-Trump, anti-Clinton operations would be both effective and plausibly deniable, with little blowback. The first group had been proven right, and this had been the catalyst in Putin's decision to sack Ivanov unexpectedly as PA head in August. His successor, Anton Weiner, had been selected for the job partly because he had not been involved in the US presidential election operations. 3. Continuing on this theme, the senior PA official said the situation now was that the Kremlin had further compromised on candidate Clinton and had been considering releasing this via plausibly deniable channels after the Duma legislative elections were out of the way in mid-September. There was, however, a growing train of thought and associated lobby arguing that the Russians could still make candidate Clinton look weak and stupid by provoking her into railing against Putin and Russia without the need to release more of her emails. Presidential spokesman Dmitry Peskov remained a key figure in the operation, although any final decision on dissemination of further material would be taken by Putin himself. 4. The senior PA official also reported that a growing element in Moscow's intervention in the US presidential election campaign was the objective of shifting the US political consensus in Russia's perceived interests, regardless of who won. It basically comprised of pushing candidate Clinton away from President Obama's policies. The best example of this was that both candidates now openly opposed the draft trade agreements TPP and TTIP, which were assessed by Moscow as detrimental to Russian interests. Other issues where the Kremlin was looking to shift the US policy consensus were Ukraine and Syria. Overall, however, the presidential election was considered still to be too close to call. 5. Finally, speaking separately to the same compatriot, a senior Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs official reported that as a prophylactic measure, a leading Russian diplomat, Mikhail Kulagin, had been withdrawn from Washington at short notice because Moscow feared his heavy involvement in the US presidential election operation, including the so-called veterans' pensions ruse reported previously, would be exposed in the media there. His replacement, Andrei Bondarev, however, was clean in this regard. Company comment. The substance of what was reported by the senior Russian PA official in Paris 1 and 2 above, including the reasons for Sergei Ivanov's dismissal, was corroborated independently by a former top-level Russian intelligence officer and Kremlin insider also in mid-September, 14 September 2016. Company Intelligence Report 2016/112. Russia-US Presidential Election, Kremlin Alpha Group Cooperation. Summary. Top-level Russian official confirms current closeness of Alpha Group-Putin relationship. Significant favors continue to be done in both directions, and Friedman and Evans still giving informal advice to Putin, especially on the United States. Key intermediary in Putin-Alpha relationship identified as Oleg Govorun, currently head of a presidential administration department, but throughout the 1990s the Alpha executive who delivered illicit cash directly to Putin. Putin personally unbothered about Alpha's current lack of investment in Russia, but under pressure from colleagues over this and able to exploit it as lever over Alpha interlocutors. Details. Speaking to a trusted compatriot in mid-September 2016, a top-level Russian government official commented on the history and current state of relations between President Putin and the Alpha Group of businesses led by oligarchs Mikhail Friedman, Petr Aven, and German Khan. The Russian government figure reported that although they had their ups and downs, the leading figures in Alpha currently were on very good terms with Putin. Significant favors continued to be done in both directions, primarily political ones for Putin and business legal ones for Alpha. Also, Friedman and Arben continued to give informal advice to Putin in foreign policy and especially about the US, where he distrusted advice being given to him by officials. 2. Although Friedman recently had met directly with Putin in Russia, much of the dialogue and business between them was mediated through a senior presidential administration official, Oleg Govorun, who currently headed the department therein responsible for social cooperation with the CIS. Govorun was trusted by Putin and recently had accompanied him to Uzbekistan to pay respects at the tomb of former President Karimov. However, according to the top-level Russian government official, during the 1990s, Govorun had been head of government relations at Alpha Group and in reality the driver and bag carrier used by Friedman and Arben to deliver large amounts of illicit cash to the Russian president, at that time deputy mayor of St. Petersburg. Given that and the continuing sensitivity of the Putin-Alpha relationship and need for plausible deniability, much of the contact between them was now indirect and entrusted to the relatively low-profile governor. 3. The top-level Russian government official described the Putin-Alpha relationship as both carrot and stick. Alpha had compromised Putin and his corrupt business activities from the 1990s, whilst, although not personally overtly bothered by Alpha's failure to reinvest the proceeds of its DNK oil company sale into the Russian economy, since the Russian president was able to use pressure on this count from senior Kremlin colleagues as a lever on Friedman and Arben to make them do his political bidding. 14 September 2016.